Hello, RayoCyrus here. Now, this will be the first in a series of videos to do with current and new tech and gadgets used for different reasons, and actually trying to find alternative, unusual uses for them that they're not originally designed for. So today I will be covering the Elgato Stream Deck, which I have here. For that in all its glory. I actually have the XL version, so that's what it looks like, not currently plugged in. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about how I think the Stream Deck could actually be used for coding, both to learn coding by novice and experienced coders, but also to teach coding. Say if you run your own edtech company, bootcamp company, and you want a different form of teaching and user interaction, I actually think that this right here could accomplish a very important part of the process, and I'll go into why. So just as a little bit of a background, the Elgato Stream Deck, the function of it primarily is to be used by game streamers, to allow them to essentially, switch between scenes, adjust lighting, adjust volume in a way that is non-disruptive to their stream while they're performing it. So that's the original use. But for me, I kind of wanted to try and play with it for a different reason. So I'm the kind of person who, I get bored very easily. I like to gamify things as much as I can to turn it into, any kind of task into an interesting task, to kind of trick my brain into getting into it. So that was kind of what I was thinking about when it comes to coding. With coding, you have to really know your syntax. You have to understand the structure, the flow, and there's a lot of memorization involved early on. Now, my level of knowledge is I've worked through a lot of tutorials on JavaScript and React to understand it on a high level, but I'm certainly not a coder. I couldn't go and write code. So this is more from the perspective of someone who was trying to work out, okay, how can I make the whole learning experience better for myself and more immersive? So that's what I'm going to get into. So in a second, we will now bring up the workflow so I can show you how easy it is to create a simple React app using the Stream Deck. Okay, that's coming up in a second. Okay, now we're going to go through the process of actually creating the simplest React app that we can. Now, bear in mind, I haven't done this process for several months, so this is a real test. I'm coming back into it having forgotten the flow of how to create it, forgotten the code, and so if I was to try looking this up in tutorials or code snippets, that's very inefficient. I'm looking up a number of online resources again to try and figure it out. So we're going to give it a go here. Maybe there'll be a little troubleshooting along the way, but hopefully you'll see how smooth the process can be. So I've got the Stream Deck up. What you see in front of you is the order flow of how this app will be created, from left all the way to the right and down. So this screen replicates what I have in front of me physically on the deck when I'm going to press the buttons. So let's just talk about some key components. A T. So what a T does, this is text. You put in a title and you paste in some text. So every time you hit this button, it will replicate that text and make it appear on the screen. So that's where we actually put our code chunks in. All the other items become apparent as we work through this process. Okay, let's create that app. So I'm starting with opening the command line, which I will now move over here. Then I'm hitting the next button along, create, which creates the create React app command. Then I'm going to give it a name such as demo1. Press enter. And now we wait a little while. And while we wait for this all to install, I will talk through a few other elements. When we get to this point, we're going to see that Atom, the editor, is going to be automatically opened. And then we're going to add in some components a bit later on. So while the React app package and dependencies are all installing, which probably will still take another maybe minute, I'm going to explain one thing. At the end, I'm going to talk about what I think are the main advantages of this approach and why I've been using it and why I think it's really good. So let's just wait a few more seconds for this to complete. Oh, it really does take a long time, even on a very good computer. Okay, we're done with that stage. We're ready to go. So next we've created it. So now I want to open Atom. So I'm going to type in Atom Demo 1. And as we see now, it's automatically loading up Atom, which is my coding editor of choice. And I'm straight in there inside the folders itself. So there are a few things now that we can do. So going back to the Stream Deck, getting it back on the screen, we see that I've got something for index.js. So I want to go into my index.js file, delete everything in there, and then on the Stream Deck, press index.js, and that's actually the code that I want. Next, I've got app.js. So I do not want the pre-existing code. I want the code that I've already pasted and saved in here from a previous tutorial, and I want to paste that in. So in it goes there, and I'm going to save it. Now, there is just a couple of things to point out here. So you see .components.app. I'd actually set it up in a subfolder. So the one thing that I do need to do is just in source, I'm going to create a new folder, call it components, press enter, and then I'm going to move the app.js file into components. So now that's been created, we can then go back into our flow. So we've made it all the way here. So now we're on the CD point. And CD, I mean, that's just to get into the directory, right? That's to simplify things even more. So CD demo 1, I'm into the demo 1, then I press npm start, enter. It's going to start the React script, open up the local host server, and there we go. The word app. There's no CSS, there's no styling, it's as simple as it can get. But that's the power. We've created the simplest React app, and I haven't even looked at the process for months. So that's why I think it's a great learning tool. Now, we'll just take a pause, and when I come back, we'll talk about all of the advantages that I think this approach has. Catch you in just 1 minute from now. Now that we've gone through the process of creating a simple React app with the Elgato Stream Deck, I'm going to point out just some of the reasons why I think this could be a really great tool for learning coding. Number one, it lets you focus on the flow of creating code. And by this I mean we linked up all the steps together that were required to set up the app itself, and the code was a part of that. Whereas if we were trying to memorize the actual code itself or go around finding snippets, that would take up our focus. Number two, it reduces the mental block to engage with learning. What I mean is, if we have everything within a folder on the Stream Deck in a logical order, so we know that left to right is the order in which we create our app, then the mind is free, the mind is open, the mind wants to engage because it knows that there's a certain path to the endpoint. And thirdly, and I think this is the big one, and I may do more videos on this as I think of more use cases, is that there's a huge potential as a teaching and as a testing tool. Think of this, for example. You're running a coding boot camp and you have all your students there and they all have a computer with a Stream Deck. Now what you could do is you could create a folder that contains a randomized jumbling of the components that we just worked through. And then what you say to the student is, okay, can you put these in the correct order? So what you're doing there is you're sort of testing their ability to remember the the logical flow through creating the code, once again, without them having to memorize the code. So that could be a fairly interesting learning medium. So there we go. That's the sort of use case, the unusual use case today, using it for coding rather than streaming. So what I'd love to hear from is any experienced developers, people learning coding. What do you think of this? Do you think as an experienced developer you actually could think of some interesting ways to make you better at coding and able to do your job quicker and more efficiently? If so, post in the comments below. And anyone from a coder or from a boot camp or an educational tech company who perhaps has some kind of new tech in the educational space that they might want demoed or tried out, or for me to look at a potential unusual use case of it, then please do get in touch in the comments below. I've been RayoCyrus. If you want to see more content along these lines, then please like and subscribe, and I will be with you very, very soon. Bye.